Monday night doubleheader to end out week 4 of this 2024 NFL season. Last week, we got 2 great games, at least on paper, where we might have needed the doubleheader because Washington and Cincinnati was exciting. Buffalo and Jacksonville was an absolute rout from the very start. Might be a similar thought tonight, DRS, with the 2 games at stake. The one that starts second in Detroit looks great. The Lions off to a 2-1 start. The Seattle Seahawks a surprising 3-0, but this by far the best team they have played all year. We'll look at the game in Detroit in just a moment. It's the second game of the night. It's the better game of the night on paper because the first one, oh boy, it might be a little bit tough. The Dolphins back at home with Snoop Huntley getting the start for Miami against Will Levis in the winless Tennessee Titans, who are 0-3. The Dolphins have dropped 2 straight, of course. The quarterback concerns. Skylar Thompson not going to play. Tua Tagovailoa on injured reserve. Total 37.5. Miami a 2.5-point home favorite. DRS, how do you handicap the opener of the 2 we have on Monday night?
You're supposed to be looking at this game coming into it, and let's just say the quarterbacks were getting better play to Will Levis and healthy on Tua Tagovailoa. You'd love the wide receivers like Waddle and Tyreek Hill would be able to go off against he's still a decent defense. But on the other side, the Calvin Ridleys of the world and the Hopkins of the world, they should be able to perform. But I'm actually looking at running backs tonight because both of these offenses aren't very good, and also questions on the defense as well, particularly on Miami's side. If you're looking at Devon Achane, he's going to be a lead dog tonight. Getting news here that it looks like per a source from Tom Pelissero that Raheem Mostert's probably not going to go tonight, which means Achane, it's going to all fall on him. His touchdown prop tonight, a -105. You probably figure he's getting at least 15 to 20 total touches. But my question's going to come from, Boy Genius down there in Miami calling the plays. What do you have dialed up for us tonight? Because even though it was Skylar Thompson and we get it, you didn't involve Tyreek Hill. You didn't get creative to get Waddle the football, and you got hammered in that game. If that's what we're supposed to be like, hey, I can draw up and get anybody open. Like Kyle Shanahan has had some success outside of Brock Purdy's of the world and superstar quarterbacks and having Nick Mullins put up big games. Why can't we have the same thing out of Mike McDaniel at this point? And that's what I'm expecting, at least him to get creative. I'm probably going to fall down the rabbit hole and say, like, hey, sooner or later, Tennessee is going to win because I do think they technically still have better overall weapons and also a better overall defense than Miami, but it's hard to go down. The one thing I do know about Snoop Huntley, you're probably going to get an honest effort, which means, Ben, what? $175, maybe in the air, make some plays with your legs. Just an ugly, ugly game tonight that you're hard-pressed to find me looking for a total to go to the over.
Yeah, so to your point, we'll do a triple option later on, our favorite side, total and prop for Monday Night Football. I'm looking at Boy Genius. We've seen some of Boy Genius's friends like Matt LaFleur, Sean McVay, and Kyle Shanahan all be good at designing schemes to benefit people where you did not expect them to be good offensively. So Mike McDaniel, you want to be that offensive mastermind and guru? Make it work with Snoop Huntley tonight against a porous Tennessee team. The Titans defense has not been bad. That we understand. But you want to be creative tonight. You better figure it out. Miami enters this game as the worst scoring offense in the National Football League. Miami last year, that was one of the 5 best scoring offenses in the league, is averaging 11 points per game. Tennessee's only averaging 16 points per game, and we'll talk about Will Levis in just a moment. I am intrigued, DRS, to see the Fins booked as a favorite. Are the Titans just that bad? They've been an underdog now in all 3 games this year. And not only do we have a winless team in Tennessee and a team that has dropped 2 straight in Miami, who we not expect a ton of this year now because of the quarterback concern around Tua Tagovailoa and elsewhere. We have a matchup of 2 of the 3 teams that have failed to cover a number so far this year. Both Tennessee and Miami 0-3 ATS. The Texans 0-3-1 against the spread so far this season. So Miami booked as the favorite. What should that tell us? Well, under Mike McDaniel, who took over the reins in South Florida to start 2022, Miami is 18-5 straight up as the favorite. They are 14-9 against the spread. They are 1-7 against the number as an underdog, dating back to the start of last year. But Donnie, when expected to win games from the odds makers, they do. And for whatever reason, the odds makers look at Snoop Huntley and the Dolphins tonight and say, hey, you should win what's going to be an ugly game.
It's basically just flipping the coin on home field advantage, and there's something to
It
that at
is.
that point. But also, if you look at the Miami Dolphins' schedule so far, with Tua game number one, 20 total points against Jacksonville. With and without in game number two against the Buffalo Bills, Tua Tagovailoa, 10 total points. Without Tua and your backup quarterback, 3 points against the Seattle Seahawks. So Snoop Huntley coming in and saying, okay, we're going to score 27 points. I just don't see it. So that's why I see that total of 37. And also, if you're the Titans, desperate for a win, is this the night you say, hey, Will Levis, primetime football, get out there. We're going to let you throw 40 times. You're not going to do that because the Dolphins probably won't be able to, sort of counterattack. So why not just go out and not make the mistakes, slow the game down and say, we'll rely on our wide receivers, our quarterback that's been there all year long, and our running game here to sort of have an impact. Because if I think overall the defenses, maybe a slight nod to the Tennessee Titans, but the offenses, I actually still have to give a slight nod to Tennessee, even though how bad Will Levis has been, just because it looks like they have their offense intact. Like the Miami Dolphins have been so bad on offense, like maybe the worst in the NFL through 3 games, because it used to be the Carolina Panthers. But Carolina looks like a juggernaut compared to the Miami Dolphins offense right now, Ben.
Yeah, listen, and that's why I think that Mike McDaniel needs to prove a little something tonight. Everybody has dealt difficult blows in the NFL. You got to make it worth it. Will Levis to throw an interception tonight at minus 146 is probably my best bet of this game. Will Levis to turn the football over would be juiced at minus 2,000. He has accounted for multiple turnovers in all 3 games for the Titans. He has thrown multiple interceptions in 2 of the 3. He is so bad, his new head coach, Brian Callahan, yelled at him last week, Will, what the F are you doing? For that reason, I can never back Tennessee. 196.5 is the passing yards prop for Levis tonight, a number he was well over a week ago, but I don't know how you have the confidence there. In fact, Donnie, this game is not great. Again, I need to see Mike McDaniel do something tonight to get at least 3 touchdowns on the board. It's the way I'm looking at this Dolphins game, just for a little bit of counter fun in the first game of 2. The second game of 2, though, it's a good one in Detroit. We preview it next. The second game of our doubleheader on this Monday night is a good one. To the Motor City we go. The Lions, a home favorite against the undefeated Seattle Seahawks, off to a 3-0 start. Detroit 2-1. 4.5-point spread now in favor of the Lions. Earlier in the week, 3 and a hook. Total 46.5. We'll talk about that in just a moment. How do you see the second game of the 2 on this Monday night in the Motor City playing out?
I think Detroit's the better overall team. Now, you might look at this and say, like, hey, Donnie, Seattle, one of those undefeated teams. But again, you have to take a look at who they played, where they played them, and who was available to play. I look at Seattle and say, yes, they're a quality football team. Geno Smith is having a good season. They have an elite trio of wide receivers. Kenneth Walker III looks to come back tonight. So now you have that double-headed combo in the backfield. I do like their offense, and quite frankly, I like their defense. I just don't know how good they are, Ben, at this point. The one thing I do know about the Detroit Lions, that team has one of the best offensive line, if not the best in football. Great wide receivers, maybe the best 1-2 punch at running back in the NFL, and Jared Goff playing well, and they're at home, love their offensive coordinator. So I do agree that line should be minus 4.5 and a total of 46.5 points. For me, I think the attack way, it really is going to probably lead through the running backs of Detroit. That's not saying that Detroit, like Amon-Ra St. Brown's not going to have a big night. He probably will. Jamison Williams on the outside. I understand that, but I do think this game is going to be won because Jahmyr Gibbs and Montgomery, I think both have a legitimate chance to score a touchdown tonight, and probably will. But for my money, I've liked Detroit from day number 1. They're at home on Monday night. I think the price is right, because if I say to myself, Donnie, Detroit's going to win this game, I'm not saying like, ooh, I don't know about how much. It's 4.5 to lay the 4.5. Now, this could be a complete game changer tonight. If Seattle walks in on Monday Night Football and beats Detroit on the road, I'm going to have to reevaluate my thoughts on Seattle, because the same way we talk about Minnesota, look at those wins that they've stacked up. They're impressive. We don't have any impressive win from the Seahawks. They have played nothing but trash at quarterback so far, and Jared Goff, he ain't trash, Ben.
And Seattle is 2-0-1 against the spread so far this season, covering against the Denver Broncos 26-20, pushing a number in overtime against the Patriots 23-20. Last week, they hammered Miami in the first game without Tua Tagovailoa against Skylar Thompson, and then Tim Boyle 24-3. But they allowed the Broncos, who won yesterday 10-9 over the Jets and 60 passing yards out of Bo Nix, to score 20, albeit that game was pretty much in control. The Patriots scored 20. I think the Lions win this game and win it comfortably. Again, it would completely change my evaluation of Seattle if they even cover the 4.5-point spread tonight in Detroit. Okay, maybe an actual playoff contender for the Seahawks, but under Mike Macdonald, I don't actually think the defense has been all that great, slightly skewed by last week against Miami, where the Fins only scored 3. So I think you could look at Jared Goff, 240.5. Frankly, a number he has only gone over in the one loss this year for the Lions in that bad game against the Buccaneers. Jared Goff has thrown an interception in all 3 games so far for Detroit, 2 against the Bucs. That was the only game he did not throw a touchdown. Completely agree, Donnie. I think it's a big night for both David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, as Ben Johnson has been getting both into the action. But I think it's a Detroit game tonight. The Lions, in their 2 wins, they have been booked as a favorite in both. They have covered. They are 2-1 against the spread. They were 11-5 against the number as a favorite a season ago. They have been the NFL's best cover team since the start of 2022. I look at the Lions tonight, making a statement at home in the Motor City.
Yeah, and also, Geno Smith probably should have a good night because the way you attack Detroit, as we know, is through the air. You take a look at Metcalf, Smith and Jigba, and also Lockett. They should be able to eat tonight, but also one of those spotlights that we like to see every once in a while. The number 1 rated defensive end in the NFL, according to Pro Football Focus, is Aiden Hutchinson. The number 1 left offensive tackle in football, that's Charles Cross of Seattle. So that's going to be a fun matchup, and maybe who wins that could decide this battle. But for me, I do think we get points, 2 offenses that should be able to score. The only tough part is, again, as we stated, we just don't know how good the Seattle Seahawks are. At the end of this game, we'll have a good measuring stick. They win, and one of the few undefeated teams left in football, that's going to be really impressive. I just don't think that's going to happen. I think Detroit overall is the better team. They control the ground game. They're at home, and they handle their home field advantage.
Seattle well over in both of its first 2 games this year, allowing 20 under last week as Miami only put up 3. The Lions, this is their shortest total of the season. Their first 3 were 50 or above. In fact, the Lions entered week 4, one of 8 teams under in all 3 games, and not just under, but under by an average margin of 2 touchdowns, 14 points per game. But those totals were north of 50. Tonight, 46.5. I do think we see some points on this Monday. Hour number 3 is up next. Welcome to hour number 3, our third and final live right here on the early line on Sports Grid. So much left remaining in this third and final hour. A doubleheader of Monday Night Football. We get you set for both games, first in Miami, then in the Motor City in Detroit. The best bets for it, we run a triple option. Our favorite side, total, and prop later on in this third and final hour. The prop perspective with Tom Vecchio later in this third hour as well. We'll get the injury analysis and insight from the Pro Football Doc, Dr. David Chow himself, and not just a doubleheader in the NFL to end out week number 4, a doubleheader to end out the MLB regular season in Atlanta. The Mets and the Braves will play too. Everything at stake for the 2 games in the A a little bit later on in this third and final hour as well. That's what we love, DRS. A jam-packed final hour here on the early line.
Playoff baseball before we actually get to see playoff baseball. You love that, too, because anytime you have some afternoon action as you wait a doubleheader on Monday Night Football, that's great. And I know me as a fan of the Phillies, I was rooting for this. Same thing if you were a fan of absolutely not the Atlanta Braves and the Mets. You wanted to see this as well. You're going to have high drama on the field and then a doubleheader tonight in the NFL. Seems like a perfect Monday on the final day of September. When you wake up tomorrow, the month of October kicks in. Pumpkins all over the place, baby. Let's go.
DRS loves that pumpkin spice. There is no doubt about it. All right, so let's start off this third hour here on TEL by hearing from the people for a second consecutive week. 2 games on this Monday night to end out week number 4 of this NFL regular season. Last week, the public had it slightly off, but who could blame them? 2 hefty favorites on Monday Night Football, the Bengals and the Bills. Buffalo won outright at home easily. The Bengals were upset by the Commanders. Not exactly the same scenario entering this Monday night. So who are the people going with? It was the question to all of you in Fade the Public. First game up is Miami and Tennessee. The Fins starting Snoop Huntley, a 2.5-point home favorite against the Titans. In the second game, Detroit lays 4.5 against the undefeated Seattle Seahawks. So who wins the two games tonight? Is it the Lions and the Dolphins, the two favorites? The Lions and the Titans, the short underdog in Tennessee. Can Seattle pull off the upset? Most of the public, DRS, 45% of the public saying it's Detroit and Tennessee. The Titans, the underdog, but the better team in Miami. Which way did you vote?
I voted Lions and Titans tonight plus 230 along with the public, so I'm not fading them because I just can't trust them. It's crazy. Like I'm not trusting the Tennessee Titans, but I look at this football game and just say whoever is favored should not be favored. So I'm just going to take the points the other way, which again, we get to the triple option. I'll explain that also a little bit further. So I do think that's the right way. I think the Lions are the ones that, you know what, that's going to be my anchor of that parlay tonight. I'm going to roll the dice, take a little bit more plus money with the Titans. So that one falls to that plus 230 price. I think it's the right way to go. But by the way, if you look at all four of those, Ben, on this tweet, the one that's getting the least amount, I can't blame the public because I don't know if it's like an extra math equation that we're waiting for here because it says Seahawks plus Dolphins, and then it has the sort of the parentheses plus 365, but no parentheses on the back end. Like maybe we can add something in there and make up our own parlay here. Yeah, the public is kind of confused by that. That's why that came in last place. If you did have the other side of the parentheses, I think you might have gotten more votes there. That's just my opinion.
I mean, DRS, as you know, if you don't have that second parentheses, it still feels like it's outstanding.
Throws me off.
And so are we laying a legal wager? Really good point by you to highlight that. I will say, it is a little bit interesting, and as we have seen this year of the underdog, we should expect at least one underdog probably to win outright or cover a number or keep a game more competitive than anticipated tonight. But normally the public would look at the two favorites and say, yeah, we're just winning outright, right? That's all you're asking. We're not saying Detroit to cover, Miami to cover. Let's lay it here. I'm starting to talk myself into the Dolphins minus 2.5, and really it's a weird place to be. It's a lot of faith, or not even faith. It's a test of faith, perhaps, and admiration for Mike McDaniel. If you are the guy that you have been your first 2 years in South Florida, if you are the offensive guru, that you stack yourself up alongside your buddies, Shanahan, McVay, and LaFleur, prove it tonight. I don't care that Snoop Huntley's been there for just over 2 weeks. I don't care that Snoop Huntley is now the starter for a week. You have known he was going to be your starter for about 7 or 8 days. Make it work tonight against a Will Levis Tennessee-led team that, oh boy, I don't think very fondly of Will Levis. He could make me eat some crow and eat my words, but I'm starting to look at Miami, and I do believe Detroit is the better side. Just to keep track, DRS, as we have said, we will track the fade the public to know if we should actually fade the public throughout this year. Most of the public, although the margin's pretty slim, did like Georgia minus 1.5. It was our FTP poll on Friday for the game of the year in college football. Alabama was second, and then the under of 50.5, of course, it went well over. So the public, technically, if we go with the leading vote getter, is 3 and 4 this year. 3 correct selections, 4 incorrect leading vote getters.
Yeah, we're probably looking at the end of the season, right? 50-50, because that would mean, like, yes, the public was right half of the time there. That's probably what they anticipated. You just get juiced out at this point. But also, let's look at Mike McDaniel, right? So he's more in the spotlight now, and it's like, hey, everything's running good. Tua is my starting quarterback now, not. But also, how about the fits coming into the game? And I don't mean the run fits or the pass fits. How about the Mike McDaniel fits here? He wears the shoes with, I think he stole them because he still has the anti-theft device on there. He wears the Rolex watch that doesn't actually have time because he got hired from the, like 1036 is when I got hired. So I bought a Rolex. So every time I look at my watch, it says 1036. He changes the hair up this year. He's wearing those South Beach shades. Is that a problem now, right now? Like maybe he's not focused on football. He wants to be in the fashion industry, Ben. Any thoughts on that affecting the game tonight?
I would think a guy that just celebrated a big B-Day and got gifted some nice kicks and some Jordans would appreciate the style that Mike McDaniel is expressing on the sideline.
Like he stole his shoes apparently, and by the way, how did he get out of the store without the bell ringing with the tag? Come on now.
I think the tag represents fashion and legitimacy. I'm not a sneakerhead. I
think it represents
in
theft.
The shoe game.
I think it represents theft. Yeah, I think it's theft.
I don't think it's the same tag just for security reasons. Are Are you rocking the Jordans tonight on air?
I think I might be. They were comfortable yesterday, man. Jordan 11's little like Space Jam edition, fantastic. Gives me an extra boost. What do I got to do? Throw my feet up on the table?
Yeah, that's the interesting thing, DRS. What's NFL football in-game live game day doing for the doubleheader? You guys relaxing at the lounge, feet out, sneaker game on point? I guess you're always kind of behind the table. But we don't.
Yeah, by the way,
we're not really
the table up, which I sort of have a problem with. So now I sort of had to slide my legs under so you get the complete fit where you can take a look at me at that point. Because Lisa had some nice purple shoes on last week. He was looking there, so I had to slide under the table. Like, look, I'm matching as well over here. I might flip that table. How about that?
Behind the desk, you don't see him, even standing at our wall monitor, what we call the magic wall, because of all that it can present. We're really not seeing the feet on the floor either. So I just want to make sure you get the recognition, and maybe your family, for a great gift, gets the recognition for those new Jays tonight.
It's true. Comfortable, good feel. Look good, play good, call the game, commentate good. That's always under the opinion here. So the boys will be booted and suited, having fun tonight, and doubleheader action, looking for some profits out there. Absolutely.
Pretty sure that's what Deion Sanders said before the NFL draft back in the 80s. Look good, feel good, commentate good. That will be the case. So that's where we go for this Monday night doubleheader. Detroit laying 4.5 at home. The Lions, a favorite in all three games. The best cover team in the NFL since the start of 2022 and 2023. Miami good as a favorite, and somehow, some way, is the favorite tonight against the Titans. But Seattle's the only undefeated team of the four in play tonight. They are 3-0. Can they make a statement, improve to 4-0, and steal one in Detroit? We'll discuss later on. The jack of all trades, the prop perspective. With Sports Grid's Tom Vecchio, he joins us here on this Monday to set the stage for not one, but two doubleheaders. Monday Night Football in Miami and in the Motor City of Detroit, and maybe a thought on what we could possibly do from a numbers and handicapping perspective for the doubleheader today to end out the MLB regular season in Atlanta between the Braves and the Mets. Vecchio, as always, we appreciate the time. Thanks for being here on the early line.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, we are in for an exciting day of sports. Like you said, two Monday Night Football games, one of which should be very good, one of which should be very bad. And then an awesome scenario in baseball, which you guys were just talking about. And we were talking about, just before we came live, there's a lot going on when it comes to baseball. Let's get to it all.
Let's get to it all, Vecchio, and let's start with the not very good Monday Night Football game to get it out of the way. The Dolphins, somehow, some way, booked as a home favorite, laying 2.5 tonight in South Florida against the Tennessee Titans. 37.5 is the total. Snoop Huntley will make his debut for the Dolphins. Will Levis just turned the football over as I was speaking. So, Vecchio, with these numbers, how do you figure the game plays out tonight in Miami?
This is going to be a low-scoring game, probably decided by the field goal, as the spread would indicate. We got to remember, Huntley was on the Ravens practice squad, so he's essentially like a fourth-string quarterback, and I just don't see a scenario where they want him to throw the ball 35 times. And we're seeing some of these lines for Tyreek Hill down at 52 yards. I think it opened at 50. That is a prop we've never seen for him. Waddle's down at 37. What are we going to be seeing from the Dolphins? The Titans, if they lose this game, their season's over. But I have a really interesting angle when it comes to the backfield for the Dolphins, and I think that should be the key point of their offensive game plan tonight.
Yeah, we'll get to those props in a second. Looks like Mostert's not going to give it a go tonight, so Devon Achane should be center stage here. But I do want to keep it with the quarterbacks itself, because when you get games where you don't expect there's a lot of points, it is reflective in some of the totals that you get. Typically, hey, quarterback's going to throw for 230, 240, 250. If we look at the FanDuel Sportsbook this morning, Tom, Tyler Huntley, 165.5. Will Levis, 196.5 to throw touchdowns here. They're both listed at a half, not even a 1.5. Now, granted, it's heavily juiced. The expectations for you, Tom, tonight from Huntley and Levis, what is it?
They're super low, and maybe the best props that we could be getting would be Will Levis to throw an interception, which I think is sitting at minus 140 or 142. That might end up being the best, because let's say the Dolphins do get out to a lead. By some miracle, they actually put up points compared to what we saw from them last week. the Titans are going to have to pass the ball, and that's like a worst case scenario for them with Will Levis having to throw the ball 35 times against basically any defense. So maybe an interception prop is the best way to go about things. I have a slight amount of interest when it comes to Will Levis over on completions, simply because they have to move the ball in the air. These are not going to be like effective or like amazing passes, but over 18.5 is a number I think he can get to despite it being a bad game.
Minus 146, the INT prop for Levis, who has thrown an interception in all 3 games this year. Multiple interceptions in 2 of the 3. Multiple turnovers, as he has also lost a fumble in all 3 games so far this season. Should be minus 1460, not just minus 146, to throw an interception. I don't really care for Will Levis, if you can't tell, Vecchio. So you mentioned the Dolphins' backfield. Try to take some of the ease and the burden off the shoulders of Tyler Snoop Huntley. If we don't see Raheem Mostert, is it a big Devon Achane game tonight for the Fins?
It is, and like Donnie, like you just said, like he should be front and center, and Achane that is. So over 13.5 rushing attempts. It was sitting at plus 100. It is now up at 14.5. I think it's minus 110, minus 120, thereabout. This is the game plan for the Dolphins. Do not put the ball in Huntley's hands, again, 30, 35 times. Can he throw the ball 18, 22 times, somewhere around there? Sure, that's fine. But getting the ball to Achane, who has been great. We saw him great in the game against Buffalo, obviously not as so much against Seattle last week. But get the ball into his hands, move it efficiently, keep third down to 3rd and 5, 3rd and 4s, get manageable passes for Huntley, and try to come away with a 3-point win. Like, that is the game plan for the Dolphins tonight.
Yeah, it should be interesting to watch it play out. 37.5 is that total, and probably going to be right around that number, if not less. Seattle Seahawks and the Detroit Lions. How about this one? Look, Motown's finest. Seattle comes in unbeaten, but Tom, they haven't played anybody. The Detroit Lions come in as a 4.5-point favorite in a total of 46.5. Let's get some thoughts on the Seattle Seahawks Detroit Lions game from you.
Yeah, like you just said, they haven't played anyone, and I've seen a lot of talk about the Seattle defense being great. We have to take this into context. They played Bo Nix in week 1, a rookie quarterback, on a road game. They played the Pats doing absolutely nothing on offense, and then they played the Dolphins last week, the first game without Tua Tagovailoa, when Skylar Thompson and Tim Boyle saw the field. Their defense has great numbers from a box score perspective, but I want to say, let's pump the brakes on that. Will they end up actually being good? Maybe, but they haven't played anyone. They have not played an offense as good as the Lions at home on the turf with these great offensive options around Jared Goff. So I'm expecting big things from the Lions against this defense that is facing their first true test of the year.
Seattle, second best total defense in the NFL, but are they really that good? Again, to Vecchio's point, the Broncos did end up scoring 20, and the Patriots even scored 20 in week number 2. So, Vecchio, you see that. It's the first total this year, sub 50 for Detroit at 46.5. The Lions, one of 8 teams entering week 4, under in all 3 games, and under by an average margin of 2 touchdowns. What do you expect out of the Lions offense tonight? And who might be making the biggest impact for Ben Johnson's crew tonight in Detroit?
I expect good things from the Lions offense tonight and good things from this game. I don't expect great things. I actually have under 48.5 in the game when it first opened up. So, you know, I'm on board with a modest amount of scoring, not some massive 30 to 33 game, something that we're going to be seeing. I want to be specifically targeting Jameson Williams for the Lions. Over 20.5 for his longest reception and over 42.5 yards. This is the double dip. We can get this done on one play. First 2 weeks, he had a 52-yard reception, a 50-yard reception. We look back to last season. He's routinely breaking off these 30, 40, 60-yard catches. He has a 14.0 ADOT. He has a 44% air yard share for the Lions. Those are both highest on the team. This is their big play threat. They have the underneath options with Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, who should be good to go, Jahmyr Gibbs coming out of the backfield. Those are the moving the chains players. Williams is that deep ball shot with Jared Goff. Again, testing the Seattle secondary for the first season. He can get this done in one play, hopefully in the first half.
If we look at that Seattle team here, Geno Smith playing decent football again, and it's going to be in a dome, so we expect a pretty good track tonight. But if we're looking at the 3 wide receivers here, DK Metcalf, Smith and Jigba, and Tyler Lockett, is one of those here, Tom, that you're looking more than the others to possibly score a touchdown tonight?
Yeah, that's going to be JSN, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. He is second on the team when it comes to total target share. DK is up at 23.8. JSN is at 20.8. We see them tied with total receptions. There's not a whole lot of red zone usage just because they haven't had a whole lot of chances. We've seen DK with these big, long touchdowns, so they're just not in the red zone. But again, I'm always going to buy into a player that has high offensive usage, high snaps, high yards per route run, high target share, and he just hasn't scored yet. I said this last year with Chris Olave. I'm going to go back to the well time and time again for a talented receiver who's up at plus 210 for a touchdown. He has the second highest target share. And a game that we're expecting to have a modest amount of points, give me JSN tonight.
Really like that look, Vecchio, at greater than a plus 2-1 number. Let's go to the final day of regular season baseball this year. You've been with us each and every week throughout this year, but especially in the summer months as the jack of all trades. The Braves, a minus 152 home money line favorite against the Mets. From a pure handicapping perspective, Vecchio, how do you approach this doubleheader today in Atlanta?
It is really, really tough. And the play, as I've said before about playoff games, it might be unders on strikeouts, except if the Braves lose game one. If the Braves lose game one, it is all aboard the Chris Sale train. And admittedly, I was very wrong about Chris Sale this year. I got called out by my friends in my fantasy baseball chat last night. I was very, very wrong about Chris Sale, but he has been awesome this year. And if he is facing a watered-down Mets lineup, it is not just Chris Sale over 7.5 strikeouts or over whatever it is, but it's Chris Sale 8+, 9+, 10+, a true ace on the mound for the Braves in a must-win game.
It is going to be insane to see what the numbers are for that second game, regardless of who wins game number one. Vecchio, we'll see you later on Sports Grid. The early line continues now. Time to establish the run ahead of the Monday night doubleheader here on the early line on Sports Grid. We run the triple option. It's our favorite side, total, and prop from either of the two games that we have to end out this Week 4 slate around the National Football League. Two of them on this Monday night. First, it's in Miami. The Dolphins laying 2.5 at home against the Titans, a modest total at 37.5. When we have a pick from that game, Donnie, I'm proud of us. Both you and I found a number in that game that entices us enough to include in the triple option. And, of course, it's the nightcap in the Motor City. Detroit hosting the undefeated 3-0 Seattle Seahawks. So let's start in the triple option. What is your favorite side of this Monday night doubleheader?
Yeah, I'm going to actually look at the Tennessee Titans here because I thought the process was for me is I can't trust anybody who's going to be favored in this game. So try to make a case for one of the teams if they're getting points, and that would be the Tennessee Titans. Yeah. And not even for the full game, just at the half, be in the lead or be tied in this game, which I don't think is going to get a lot of points. I think that's going to be doable. When we talked to Doc as well, completely healthy on offense doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be great, but it'll be better than an injured bad offense at this point. Two capable wide receivers, two capable running backs in the backfield. Will Levis, if you can just say, you know what, I'm not going to throw that interception or fumble this football until the second half, I do think you might be able to get a decent performance out of the Titans, which, again, is not really a reflection of them, Ben. It's a reflection of the Miami Dolphins and what I think I'm getting out of their offense tonight, which I don't think is going to be a ton. If we're sticking with Devon Achane on the ground, going up against Tony Pollard, I can look at that halftime and say we might be staring at 7-7. 10-10, 13-10, 10-7, you know what I mean? Where it's going to be close to the balance. And I do exactly. I think the Titans can be at least tied or have the lead at the break against this Dolphin offense. I went with my side as the Titans first half plus 1.5 at FanDuel.
Listen, I think it's a really smart look, right? Because you would kind of bake in even the fact that Will Levis has been a disaster this year, that they're the more comfortable and ready side. It's the same cast and crew all 3 weeks as it was throughout the preseason, throughout training camp, all of that good stuff. Miami has a lot to figure out. It will be Snoop Huntley's Miami debut tonight. He was signed just about 2 weeks ago. They have known he is going to be the starter just for this past week. But I'll get to my thoughts about Miami in the long haul in just a moment. My favorite side, rather simple. Detroit laying 4.5. 3.5 was a better number earlier this week. It would be what I highly recommend, but it is now gone. I'll lay the 4.5 with the Lions. They've been the best cover team in the NFL since the start of 2022. They've been the best cover team in the NFL since the start of last season. They are both 2-1 straight up and against the spread this year. They've been favored in all 3 games. Last year, they were 11-5 against the spread as the favored side. It's pretty simple, DRS. I think Seattle will be a fine team. I think they will flirt with 500. They are not going to be an undefeated team for much longer or even after tonight. The level of competition just has not been there for the Seahawks. If they make me eat my words, congrats. Seattle is a formidable 4-0 side. Maybe kind of readjust how we look at the NFC West. All of that can be baked in if Seattle pulls off the upset tonight. I just don't see it happening. I think Detroit wins by a touchdown. They'll cover as a 4.5-point home favorite.
I think it's the right side to do as well, because you're also looking at adversity, which technically we really didn't have much of Seattle. I think that game went to overtime against New England, but you're now going to get that's what an offense looks like against our defense, because if you're just looking at some of the grading systems, it looks like the Seattle secondary, which includes cornerbacks and safeties, should be the best in the NFL. Then they don't actually downgrade those based on the talent that you play. You're going to get top-flight wide receivers, top-flight running backs, top-flight offensive line, a very good offensive coordinator, and a capable quarterback tonight to really stress. And also, you don't have the elements to creep in, like, hey, it was really windy or rainy that day to keep it down. You're in the dome tonight. It's going to be full go, and I expect Detroit to have a pretty good day, like a 27-20 type final. I don't know if Detroit completely rolls here, because Seattle is a respectable football team, but I think you're right about this. It's under the thought premise, Donnie, just pick the winner tonight. I think it's going to be Detroit. Well, then you got to lay the 4.5. Simple as that.
Yeah, I would agree, DRS, with that thought process, which goes into your favorite total. Seeing some points tonight in Detroit. I'll just say this. The Lions, one of 8 teams that entered week 4, having gone under in all 3, but all 3 of those totals were north of 50. They were under by a considerable margin, by an average of 14 points, 2 touchdowns per game, but this is their first sub 50. It's at 46.5. And just kind of to echo your point here, DRS, on that favorite total that I like as well, especially if I think Detroit is going to cover. Seattle did allow the Broncos and the Patriots to score 20 points against them in the opening 2 weeks.
Yes, and that is certainly going to play into that at that point here. But I do think that Detroit is the better side overall. I think those points are going to come, and certainly over 46.5, I think, does make a lot of sense also. Pushing the football down the field, if the way to attack Detroit secondary, you're going to have 3 really good wide receivers. It's up to Geno Smith. If I get good Geno Smith tonight, they should be able to move the football and be competitive tonight. That's what I'm anticipating here tonight.
Jared Goff's number 240.5, a number he has been well under in both of Detroit's wins. Just something to pay attention to. I think a win and a good Goff night in store for the Lions. DRS, it's something we talked about earlier. Metrically, stats-wise, there's not anything really for me to back this up. In fact, Miami is the worst scoring offense in the National Football League. 19.5 is the team total for the Fins tonight. They must go over. If Mike McDaniel is that guy, if he is the offensive guru we give him credit for being, he has known Stoop Huntley has been his starter for 7 days. Make it work tonight against Tennessee. Dolphins over 19.5 for their team total.
Should be an interesting one. If they don't win tonight, Ben, he's going to have to go back to TJ Maxx and return those shoes here and say, I apologize, and somebody didn't take off the little theft device on it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Tough scene at this point. You win, you get to keep all the stuff you out here. You lose, you got to return it, Ben. Simple as that.
All right, favorite prop to end out the triple option. We're establishing the run in both of our favorite props, DRS. You first.
On fire, by the way, with touchdown props so far lately. Let's keep the fire burning tonight. David Montgomery, anytime touchdown scoring market, minus 120 price. There's one thing that we know. There's levels to this game. I think both of the running backs, by the way, have a legitimate chance to score. But who gets first crack inside the 3-yard line? It's typically Montgomery. They'll be inside the 3-yard tonight. Touchdown, David Montgomery. I'll lay the minus 120 that he gets in tonight.
DRS, there was some competition between the two, and I guess there still kind of is for who is used more, but they both have been utilized. Jahmyr Gibbs over 78.5 combo prop, rushing plus receiving. He has had over 100 in each of the last 2 games. Donnie, right side, enjoy the money line, enjoy NFL football, in-game live game day. Always sad when we end out a Monday together. I'll see you on Thursday. More of the early line up next.